The Owl House just premiered its third and final season, and as most fans know, this season was cut drastically short. What was originally meant to be a full season was cut to just 3 specials with the length of 6 total episodes. The structure of the show is very similar to Amphibia so far, which ended its second season with Anne returning to Earth with the Planters, and the first half of season 3 being about the Frog family having to adjust to life on Earth the same way Anne had to adjust to life in Amphibia. The Owl House likewise probably meant to spend the entire first half of the season on Earth, showing the Witch Gang slowly adjusting to how different Earth is from the Boiling Isles. With that in mind, I want to go over all the little things that happened in the first special, and talk about how they might have played out if they had a full season to explore the various stories. Before we do, however, I want to emphasize just how artfully this reduced episode order has been handled as far as the story goes. While the series feels faster than in season 1, it doesn't feel rushed, and this episode plays out so satisfyingly dramatically for something that had to condense an entire season into just 40 minutes. Spoilers ahead. The opening scenes go over what I think would have been a full premiere, involving the gang finding their little sleeping spots at Luz's home, turning the abandoned house into a clubhouse, and attempting to make the door bring them back to the demon realm. These plots, mostly told in montage, would have been great to see across an entire first episode, with it ending on the note that the gang would be stranded there for a while, and would need to focus on things other than just fixing the door, the same way Luz had to in the Boiling Isles. This episode is crazy with how much great development it does for Luz's parents, with us even getting a look at Luz's dad and a pretty good idea of what happened to him. Camila seeing the principal as such a threatening figure was a really great choice, I think. It was scary, and I think it gives kids a little bit of a hyperbolic insight into what their parents may be feeling when people are upset with their children. As expertly as it is weaved into this special, I could see each of these characters having their own episode exploring them, or at least just one exploring Camila and her husband together. We now know that he got sick when Luz was a little younger, prompting them to move to a new city where he could get special treatment. It was hard for Luz, but she did her best to get through it. What helped her cope was fantasy novel escapism, which quickly became her shield from the real world after her father inevitably passed away. Despite this being a bit of an unhealthy coping mechanism, Camila surprisingly enjoyed most of Luz's antics. However, in addition to the problems it was causing other people, Luz's grades were suffering as well. We now know that the silly things that Luz was doing were signs that she can be competent when something was of interest to her, and in the Boiling Isles, she excels where she failed back on Earth. We see very little of Luz's school life and how her situation is affecting it, what with her gang back home in the clubhouse. I was surprised she was going at all and not having V go for her while she tried to fix the door. Seeing Luz's meltdown in class was cool, but I imagine if they had the full half-season order, we would have had an episode of Luz addressing how much she has changed since leaving for the Boiling Isles and not having to deal with things like school. Whether or not she would have started excelling with school is a bit of a mystery, but it would have been fun to see what the writers do with her returning to classes after being in the demon realm for so long. In the montage early on, we see that Luz has a coming out celebration, and while a lot of fans doubt that an episode may have been centered around Luz trying to come out to her mother, the rest of the episode was so blatant with their relationship that I can't imagine the plot would have been rejected. As it is the final season, it seems they can get away with most anything they want, as final seasons have always been used to push the envelope since the cancellation is already decided. Having V meet and interact with the gang was a lot of fun, and perhaps one of the only things that felt a little fast in this special. There was a very sweet moment where V saw how close the others had become, and through the events of Season 2, we had already felt that growth, but V becoming part of the gang didn't have that same feeling, especially when they left her behind. I like to think that V would have had a full episode dealing with not being part of the gang, and perhaps have been able to set her up as being the person who supports everyone by staying behind, or perhaps even end up going back to the Boiling Isles with everyone. With a full half season to get to interact with V, I'm sure she would have felt like part of the gang the same way Hunter did by growing closer to everyone across Season 2, and honestly I would have loved to see V join them and see how she could have interacted in the next 2 specials. One thing I think we would have seen for certain is an episode with the witches actually interacting with humans, trying to ease themselves into it, but of course getting sucked into some crazy adventure. V's friends would have been an easy choice for this, though it was fun getting to see Masha get involved with their shenanigans, as well as replace Jacob at the Historical Society. This could have been its own episode, or, like here, it could have happened off screen. Jacob appears during a little play to try and warn everyone that Gus and the others are witches, and a recurring theme this season likely would have been him trying to expose the gang, particularly when they are investigating things around the Historical Society and their strange map. Azura has been a recurring thing in the show, and while I doubt we would have gotten a full episode dedicated to Azura lore, I imagine we would have seen quite a bit more clips from her movies and such throughout the season if it had a full order. The special ended with Luce being in costume as Azura, and in many ways had finally become her. It would have been the perfect opportunity for even more foreshadowing of what is to come. While there was virtually no reference to it, I think that at least the subplot of one episode would have likely been about Ida's previous adventures in the human realm as well. With the door bringing Ida specifically to Luce's town, there'd be a lot of fun things for the gang to find all over the place. They did end up finding an encoded map of sorts under some floorboards, and it led to some Titan's blood and a vial with an owl-headed topper. How this got here is a bit of a mystery, but something I'm working on theories for perhaps another video. Across the special, we saw little references to the tiny little gunk of Belos that remained. It seems to destroy most anything living that it touched, but he seemed to get gradually stronger, moving from little snails to larger animals, and making them terrifying as they fall apart. By the time Belos' gunk was written in, they knew the series was being condensed, and Belos' fate may have changed drastically from what they had originally intended. That being said, across the season, I could see the mystery of the Belos gunk slowly growing as he possesses larger and larger things and gets mixed up in the events of the town. As they go along trying to figure out what weird magic thing is terrorizing the town, they'd slowly realize Belos is out there and gaining his strength back. The portal door is interesting in that it's meant to be mobile, but the episode ended with the gang making it home through a portal in the graveyard instead of the abandoned house. It only needed the fuel of Titan's blood and it was right open. This, again, I'll be exploring in an upcoming video, but it really has me thinking there's a lot to this town's history that we just don't know. With a whole season about trying to get home, we could have had multiple episodes revealing how all these pieces were connected to each other, from the map, to the Titan's blood, to the graveyard gate, and well beyond. The episode ended with quite the epic battle, and the gang returning to the demon realm, with even Camila tagging along, even though V is staying behind. Camila's arc across the special about becoming a parent to the others was great, and I imagine with more time, we would have seen an episode about how she started by being frustrated by the kids, but eventually becoming a mother to them all. Knowing she'd go back to the demon realm with them not just for Luce, but to make sure they got home safe was extremely satisfying to me. As of now, it seems like the remaining specials will air next year, with there only being 2 left. Belos coming back in perhaps a more ferocious form than ever is already scary, but it's important to remember that when we left the Boiling Isles, it wasn't in a good state. Very little was said of Ida and Lilith in this episode, or the others that were left behind, and a lot of time has passed since we last saw them. The last glimpse we got was the Boiling Isles being torn apart by the Collector, with him threatening to play the Owl House with them. But I'll be doing another theory video on what to expect in Season 3's final 2 episodes where I discuss all of that. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it, and I'll see you next time.